Healing was the warm-up. This is the main fucking event. Welcome to Go Regulate Yourself, the unapologetic, unfiltered love letter you didn't know you needed. This is where mental health meets real life, where growth gets gritty, and where we stop pretending healing makes us saints. Think of it like therapy with tequila shots and a side of tough love. In this space, we're learning how to take responsibility for our shit, face the chaos of life, and become the best version of who we are. So if you're ready for your weekly what the fuck am I doing moment, let's dive in. Hello, Reg Babes, and welcome back to another episode on the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. My name is Brianne, I am your host, and today we are talking about a concept that has been completely changing how I show up in my life in the last few days, and is something that I hope will help inspire you to make some changes and hopefully get on track with the direction you want to go and the things that you most desire to call in for your life. So without further ado, let's dive on in. Hey Reg Babe, have you heard the news? Go Regulate Yourself is coming to you live and in person. That's right, we have the first live podcast event happening in Edmonton, Alberta this September. Join us at the Orange Hub Theatre on September 25th with a live audience where we are interviewing 4 incredibly impactful speakers on what it takes to overcome shame, heal the hard stuff that you've been through in your life, and come out on top. Tickets are on sale right now, and until August 9th, you can grab our early bird pricing for a low rate of $54.99. You can get yours by heading to GoRegulateYourself.com and clicking the live event tab at the top of the screen. We cannot wait to see you there, and don't forget to go regulate yourself. Now, I want to preface this by letting you know that for the last few weeks, last few months, things in my life have been interesting. We'll say they've been interesting, but truthfully, they've been a little bit weird. And the fact of the matter is, when I returned home from our trip abroad through February to May, when we were traveling over Asia, I came home feeling very inspired, very ready to check boxes and do all the things. And I thought that I had this really clear vision for what I wanted to create and bring into the world and how I wanted to do it. And I felt so inspired, right? I was so motivated. I hit the ground running when we got home. I felt like I was really organized and on top of stuff, following a schedule that felt really good to me. And while I was doing all of these things, I was also starting to see some really awesome progress. Not just here in the podcast world, but of course, mainly in my writing space, where it has been a relatively new thing that I have been doing. I started to see subscriber counts go up, people engaging with my work, saying that my words were really resonating with them, all of these great things. And so I thought, oh, great, this is amazing. I'm getting the results that I desire. I'm finally on track. I can see it, the life that I've been dreaming of for my whole 33 years. It's finally coming to fruition. And all I have to do is keep going with consistency. And so I bore down, I kept working, I put more effort out there. And suddenly, everything dried up. Not here in the podcast space, because things have still been going pretty incredible, where we've had so many more listeners coming into our community, more downloads, all of those great things, but more so in terms of the writing space, where subscribers slowed down significantly. There was less engagement, less comments, less likes on the things that I was writing. And I really got in my head about this, and I started to overanalyze, overthink, beat myself up, and fall into what I will call is a victim mode or victim trap. And as most of us do, when things stop working in our favor and it feels like we're facing a lot of challenges and things are getting really hard, I did what we do, and I started comparing myself to other people on Substack, which is, FYI, probably one of the worst things that you can do. I started to beat myself up heavy and look at the profiles of these other women that were coming across my feed, of how incredible their pictures were, how amazing their captions were, how glorious their lives looked like. And I really felt down about myself and started to second guess everything that I was doing. It felt like I was somehow behind, that I had missed my opportunity, that I had wasted all of this effort. And I continue to spiral into a really, really low place that I have been at for a couple of weeks, trying to fight off, ignore, pretend wasn't there. But we all know what that happens when we resist things that are showing up for us. We end up having them continue to persist until we finally look them in the eye and acknowledge it. So the last few weeks, last few months, I have been in this weird space, this battle, this place of trying to fight off these lower vibration feelings. And finally, things kind of came to a head in the last week where I hit this really, really low point. And I thought, there's got to be something that can pull me out of this. Why am I feeling this way again? I know that I'm in the middle of that quantum fall before the quantum leap. Things are shifting in my reality to line up with the direction that I most want to go. But even when we know those things, of course, it doesn't make it any easier for us in relation to where we're heading and what we are trying to do. So I started doing other things outside of the comparison piece. I really tried to get off of my phone, move away from social media, create more silent space for meditation and downloads. I did a lot of journaling, a lot of crying, a lot of body somatics. And finally, I picked up a book that has been sitting here in the place that we are renting. It's not mine, it's the owner's book that's sitting here. It caught my eye a while ago, but I just haven't been able to pick it up. And the title of it was Live the Life You Deserve. And so I got goosebumps just as I said that. But I picked it up and I started to read it over the last few days. And the messaging in this book, although it's something that I'm very familiar with and have been living and teaching and breathing for such a long time, it really just hit me in a different way. Call it a self-reminder, if you will, something that shook me out of that victim mode space that I was in and helped me realize where I needed to go from this point moving forward, how I could pull myself out of those depths of despair to get to the place that I most wanted to be. And so in the initial chapters, it's talking about the difference between our highest self and who we have been showing up in as most of our lives, and how to really rid ourselves of all of the layers that are keeping us from being that highest self version, and how we can more adequately step into that version of us moving forward in our lives more easily, more effortlessly, etc. And so one of the questions that it asked in this initial chapter was, what is your highest self? And it was an opportunity to reflect upon this definition and see what actually comes up for you in terms of what you believe your highest self to be. Because for most of us, we have this idea in mind, this definition of this version of me who maybe has all these things, does all these things, shows up in her life in this particular way. This is that version of me. And we have that definition in our minds. But what I don't think a lot of us recognize or realize is that with the contrast of life, for every expansion, there is a contraction. For every inhale, there is an exhale. We have light and dark, up and down, all of these opposites. So when we talk about our highest self and we talk about this version of us that feels the lightest, the happiest, the best in all areas of our life, we have to also acknowledge that there is a version of us that is our lowest self, the opposite of what this might be. And for a lot of us, we can find ourselves stuck in that lowest self vibration if we're not careful. And it can take some time to pull ourselves out of that and realign ourselves with the version of us that we want to be. And so to me, and part of what came through in this book was thinking about our highest self as the version of us that doesn't wear any masks. Think of it as the most authentic version of who we are. Before the world told us who we could be, before there was any limitations or expectations or consequences, anything that required validation or us to give in order to get, before there was any of these rules, our highest self is the version of us that we just are. without the judgment, the criticism, the opinions. It is just the version of us who is the most authentic. And so when we think about showing up in this space, I want you to think about what comes up for you, because I know when I envision myself stepping into my highest self, the biggest thing that blocks me is the self-criticism and the self-judgment about the ways in which I can and cannot do something. As an easy example, in relation to the last few weeks/few months of how I've been feeling, watching other people on social media, in Substack, in these places, showing up to the full capacity of what I dream that I might one day be able to do as well, but then holding myself back because I'm judging and criticizing myself in the effort that I'm putting in today and what I'm actually speaking about or how I'm actually showing up right now. I find that I'm holding myself back in relation to not fully embracing and embodying that version of me because of fear, because of these limiting beliefs, because of these thought patterns that I keep replaying over and over in my mind. And I think truly that is one of the biggest blocks or resistances that we feel in relation to fully stepping into our higher self is the stories that we are carrying based on the experiences we've had in our life about what we can and cannot do, about what is possible or safe for us to go after. Now, one of the things that I used to teach often in my coaching programs, back when I was doing a lot of trauma coaching, I had what was called a trauma release weekend retreat. And I would bring hundreds of women through this program over the course of a few years where we would go through everything that I know about healing from trauma and the ways in which you can release the things that you've been through and how to actually rewire your brain and reprocess emotions in your nervous system to help reset it and get yourself to that baseline, that neutrality that we're all seeking within our lives. And one of the components that I used to teach in this weekend was in relation to what I call the trauma cycle or the trauma loop, and the importance of being able to break that to move forward in our lives. Now, to break this down in a really quick way without going into all of the nitty-gritty details of it, essentially every experience, every traumatic moment that we have in our lives has a solution of how we dealt with that problem initially, filed away within our brain in a system that I like to call the file cabinet or the file folder. And so when we have that initial experience of trauma, typically we have an emotion that comes along with it, and then a thought pattern that also develops because of this. This eventually leads into a fear, a belief, an action, and a habit that we end up taking, creating, and maintaining with that cycle of trauma. And every single time that we experience something that is similar in our lives moving forward, we typically repeat that cycle, creating this trauma loop that continues to replay over and over and over again for us until we actually break the cycle. And so if you picture this like a file folder or a file cabinet, you have a single file folder and you have the trauma that you experienced being stored as the problem. And then you have how you actually dealt with that cycle of what you created with the emotion, the thought, the belief, the action, etc., stored with that same trauma in that file folder. That is the solution of how you dealt with it. Problem, solution. So now that file folder gets stored away in this file cabinet, and that cabinet becomes the framework for how you continue to show up in your life moving forward. In psychology, they call this a schema, which means that this is a basis for how you as an adult operate in your life because of these experiences that you had when you were young or throughout your lifetime that taught you something in particular, how it was safe for you to show up, how it was important for you to show up, how you actually got the things that you most needed or desired from love, affection, time, energy, etc. We have these different frameworks, these ways of being that really are the ways in which we have created our personalities. Only most of the things that we call our personality are actually trauma loops, trauma responses, ways of navigating the hurt that we once experienced. And so these schemas, these frameworks are literally what makes up the lowest version of ourselves. The version of us that is showing up in our life completely masked as a pretend version of us, who is constantly putting other people before ourselves, who is basing how we react or respond to a situation based on how we think other people want us to respond or react, how we think that we should show up for them in order for them to like us more or love us more or give us the things that we most need. This heavily masked, heavily self-criticizing version of ourselves, the version of us that doesn't feel safe to exist in her authentic form, this is that lowest self version. This is the version who does not believe it is safe to be herself. And if we are not careful, the lowest version of us can show up in every area of our life, sometimes in the most unexpected ways, as it has for me in the last little bit. And it could take a lot of self-preservation, self-reflection, self-connection to be able to recognize how that is showing up and what we need to do to break those ties, break those connections, and really release that lower self version, but in the process of releasing that, find the love and acceptance for that version of us so that that can exist safely within our darkness, but doesn't need to consume us, right? We can observe what is happening within this version of us and the things that we were taught, this kind of inner child reparenting, if you will. We can acknowledge that those things are present, but it doesn't actually have to consume our every waking moment or completely steamroll what is happening in our lives. So, this higher self creation is about us not necessarily having certain things, which is a really important distinction that I want you to be aware of. Your highest self isn't a version of you that has certain things, which I think is where so many of us get tripped up, right? Because we think about, well, this version of me that I am becoming, she has certain things in her life. She has the money, she has this career, she has this lifestyle, etc., etc., etc. And when we visualize the higher self from that perspective, what we're really saying to ourselves is, I am not the best version of me until I have those things. I am not the best version of me until I have achieved, till I have done, till I have received certain things in my life. In actuality, the highest version of us is the version of us that exists right now, but it is a version of us that exists without judgment, without criticism, without needing to check a specific box. It is a version of us that can and will exist right now in this moment if we only allow ourselves to let down the walls, peel back the layers, and show up as she truly is. There is a way that the highest version of you shows up in her life. There is a way that she speaks, a way that she behaves, a certain amount of action that she takes, which is distinctly different than the lowest version of you, the one who is hiding and wallowing and making excuses and living in victim mode. There is a difference between those two things. It's not about what either of them has, it's about who either of them are. Again, not about achieving. It's not about checking a box. It's not about a career, a certain waistline size or a size on the scale. This is about who you are at the core of your being and who you allow yourself to show up as, authentic versus inauthentic. And this distinction, this realization for me has been absolutely mind altering, life altering. I have been able to really cut through a lot of my own inner bullshit, things that have been holding me back, the things that I have allowed myself to procrastinate on because I've now recognized that I am and can be my highest self in every single moment. It's not about connecting to things that I don't have. It's about connecting to the version of me that I most want to be. How I show up in my relationships, how I show up in my business, how I show up in social interactions, in every single area of my life. I can tap in, tune in to that version of me at every waking moment. I have that opportunity, that choice, that ability, that capability within me. And now, how I'm feeling as I shift out of this wallowing, this self pity, this comparison loop that I have been in, where I've been allowing myself to completely change my energy and show up not in the space that I want to show up. I am now finding myself having more inspiration, more motivation, more lust and love for life. I have more joy, more happiness, more presence, more gratitude. All of these things are present because I am choosing to lean in to the energetic component of what my highest self really is. It's not about the things, it's not about checking a box, it's about what is present at the end of the day. And I swear that this method, this way of thinking about this way of redesigning what it means to be your highest self, this really can change your life if you will allow it to. It is a way of stepping in and taking responsibility for how you are showing up, which is something that we all have the responsibility of. And so if you're somebody like myself who has been feeling like they're in a low place, who's been comparing your journey to somebody else's, who has been beating yourself up, feeling low, maybe not doing the things that you said you were going to do, breaking promises to yourself, not moving in the direction of the goals or the things that you desire, then this is something that you're going to want to play around with. And so what I encourage you to do today, tonight, whenever you find space, is to sit down with a journal and ask yourself, what is your highest self? What is my highest self? And allow yourself to play with the difference in how the lowest self versus the highest self version of you shows up. What are the ways in which you can embody the highest version of yourself right now? What are the ways in which you can allow this to take over your life and be something that you embody every moment of every day moving forward? What changes might you see? What inspiration or motivation or empowerment might you create in your life as a result? I'm curious to know what your answers are and how this radically alters and shifts things for you in your life as it has for me in the last couple of days. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope that that struck a nerve within you. I hope that resonated deeply, that it sparked something within you. And I hope that you'll sit with this and see what ways this can change things for you in your life moving forward. I am sending you so much love. I will catch you in the next episode. And remember to go regulate yourself. Mwah. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. If you felt called out in the best way, I would be so honored if you drop below and leave a review or share this with a friend who needs to hear it too. And remember, regulate yourself before you wreck yourself. I'll catch you in the next episode. Mwah.